that this recording is available after the meeting. Thank you everyone for joining today's call. I'm happy to see you in big numbers. We are almost 30. So as usual, we'll start with a few announcements, then I'll introduce the speakers, then we'll have the presentations and the Q&A at the end. So we'll try as much as possible to make sure that we have a good amount of time for Q&A at the end so that you can interact with today's speakers. With that, I'll share my screen. Just a few announcements that will take about 3 or so minutes. As usual, just a reminder that I'll keep everybody muted while we have the speakers present. You can put your questions on chat and then we'll have a chance to answer them at the end, or otherwise we can just have the speakers comment on chat if it's a quick question. Please put your name, country, and also the organization on chat so that you can get to know where you are calling in from and where you are listening us from. And again, remember to put mute so that we can have a good conversation. So as part of today, we'll have a webinar topic for water funds design and partnerships webinar. And as part of our reminders, our Water Funds for Africa Network newsletter is usually available bi-monthly. So we had a newsletter that went out last month. Kindly check it out on your emails. And if you don't have it, I'll put a link on chat so that you can sign up. So again, as a reminder, kindly put your name, your organization, and also your country, the country you're calling in from on the chat so that you can get to know each other and also get to know who is on the call. Also, if you would like to chat with someone in particular, you can use the chat button for that. So this will be our structure today. So I'm doing the welcoming and the speakers' introductions as well as the announcements. Then we'll have Nicholas Deron, who will present about the Kruger to Canyon Catchment Investment Program. Then we'll have River Yala Water Fund that will be presented by Stella Wajala, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So we'll try and have our speakers stick to their 20 minutes so that we can have enough time for the Q&A session. So the other announcement is that we have a new economic and financial analysis document, deep dive. It's a 70 pages document. It's a good read. So kindly look at it to get to understand about the benefits and the stakeholders and how to measure them in terms of tools, the indicators, as well as how you can communicate the results to stakeholders and use these results to leverage for financing. So it's available on the toolbox, but I'll also put this link on the chat for your use. So after this, keep an eye on the chat if there's any link that you would like to use, either to sign up to get the newsletter or to get this deep dive. Also, we have some openings in terms of job opportunities through our Twitter pages. So you can go to our Twitter followers and you can be able to see the links and apply for current jobs if you'd like to work with water funds. And also to get to understand more about our work, we post there frequently. So in terms of our speakers today, we have Nick Deron, who is a senior program manager with the Kruger to Canyon in South Africa. And Nick is a senior manager with the K2C. He has over 15 years experience related to development and strategic management of conservation projects in South Africa. His role within K2C over the past 6 years has focused on implementation of projects that aim to protect and improve the management of catchments and corridors that link the escarpment water areas with the Kruger National Park. This work has also strongly focused on providing benefits to people while exploring opportunities to unlock finance for this work. So you'll get to hear from Nick in a few, and he has also experience working with different partners, including the Nature Conservancy, Conservation International, and Conservation South Africa. So the other speaker will be Dr. Stella Wajala, who is a co-founder with the Women in Water and Natural Resources Conservation. And Dr. Stella is an experienced gender and environmental conservation specialist with a background training in education, limnology, ecology, environmental impact assessment, community climate change resilience, participatory integrated community development, community conservations, and dialogues in water and watershed management through nature-based solutions. She holds a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD degree programs, all aligned to conservation, environmental conservation, water, and food security. So Stella co-founded an environmental conservation organization that is all women-led, that is called Women in Water and Natural Resources Conservation, all we work in short, that enhances gender mainstreaming in environmental conservation, water, and food security. Stella also leads the River Yala Water Fund program that started in April last year with the aim of enhancing water security in the 4 counties in the Western Kenya. So you'll get to hear about Stella's journey and what the Water Fund is doing, and also some of the nature-based solutions that they are implementing and the studies are ongoing. So that's it in terms of the announcement as well as the speakers. So with no further announcement, I'll proceed to the presentations where I'll ask Nick to share his screen if he's able to. And Nick, if you're not able, I can support with that. And if you have joined us later, kindly put your name, organization, as well as the country you're calling in from on the chat so that we can get to know you. And also, if you would like to have conversations with someone in particular, you can also put in your communication details as emails or phone number or private chat on the chat button. I'm assuming everybody can be able to access the chat button. If not, kindly raise your hand. Nick, are you ready?
Florence, I don't think I have an option on here to share screen, so maybe you can do that for me.
Sure. I can share the screen for you.
It's just popped up. Hold on.
Okay.
I think it should be fine. Give me a sec. Just tell me if you can see things.
It's coming up. It should be up in another second. Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks very much for this opportunity. And just before I start, this has been a long road in terms of the work that we do in the Kruger to Canyons. And I
Nick,
think
I'm so sorry. Can you switch your display settings so that we see the presenter view?
Display settings.
Yeah, swap presenter view.
Presenter view. All right. Now, can you see now? Is that right?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So I think the theme is quite apt because you know, from the outset, it's just important to recognize that although you know the Kruger to Canyons as an organization has been driving a lot of this work, it wouldn't have been possible without a whole range of partners within the landscape that we've been working with over the past 10 years. So just briefly, who Kruger to Canyons, who we are, and we form part of the UNESCO's network of biosphere reserves, and we form part of the Man and Biosphere program globally. And the Man and Biosphere program has a strong focus on various elements, and it sort of works in threes, but within our landscape as well, we have a diversity of habitats, which is represented by our logo. And then within the Man and Biosphere program, there's a strong emphasis on conservation, as well as sustainable development and what's termed logistics, but it's really around working with people. And there's a strong element of zonation, which is critical to our work, and obviously, programs such as a catchment investment program, which seeks to conserve core areas and buffer areas that are important to people and transition areas as well. So it's just, I think, important to just keep in mind that, at least in our landscape, that UNESCO framing, which is quite important to us. And our vision is really centered around partnering, and biosphere reserves, in their essence, is really play a role in trying to facilitate partnerships and leverage opportunities for people to work together to achieve our mission. And it's really about reconciling biodiversity and socioeconomic development, but it's about partnerships. So where we are in South Africa, this is a map that shows that, and the Kruger Canyons biosphere it's quite a large area, 2.5 million hectares. So again, it's not an area that we can conserve and improve its management of on our own. It's about working with different entities to achieve that. And this map just really, catchments are a really strong part of our focus. And these are the sort of 3 key catchments or sub-catchments within our region that we have the opportunity to really influence how they're managed. And these catchments then form part of the greater Olifant system, or at least the upper Letaba and Blyde. But they really make important contributions to those catchments, which flow into the Kruger National Park and ultimately Mozambique. So there's also transboundary obligations linked to that. So just delving into a bit more of the context to give you a feel for the area, we really are blessed in terms of biodiversity that occurs here, and it's really due to this altitudinal gradient. We have this escarpment area, and within that escarpment area, we have a lot of threatened and endemic species, and it's really important from a grasslands perspective. And then scattered around, or scattered within the area, we have Afromontane forests and sort of misspelled forests on the lower slopes, and then we have our savanna habitats and a network of riverine systems that ultimately connect to the Kruger National Park, and it basically connects, and this is sort of where our name really comes from, but it's about the Kruger Canyons and how these areas are interlinked. And then at the bottom, there's a whole lot of different important species that occur. The Blyde catchment as well, it forms part of what in South Africa we talk about strategic water source areas. And these are areas that have been delineated in the country that cover something like 4% of South Africa's land surface, but produce more than 50% of our water. So it's a priority from that regard. And then central to our landscape and the Blyde catchment is the Blyde Dam, which flows out of the catchment, flows into the Blyde Dam, and that Blyde Dam basically provides water to everyone in the lower areas. And this includes a really big good spread agricultural sector that exports internationally, mostly mangoes and citrus, a whole range of different towns, and relatively small but important sort of hubs, especially from a tourism perspective. And then the Kruger National Park. So from a kind of economic perspective, in this region, we all rely on the Blyde catchment and the Blyde Dam. So the challenge is really, and the threats to these areas really centers along a long history of land use change. Most of it's been forestry, and to a lesser extent agriculture. And these land use changes have led to various threats, including alien invasive plants, overgrazing, too much fire management. There are threats around these areas also rich in mineral sources. So there are impacts from illegal gold miners in the catchments. And then these threats obviously have an impact, whether it's sedimentation that flows into the dam, alien plants that impact on the water sources, the illegal miners that have an impact as well in terms of chemicals and that kind of thing that flow into the system. So what is the solution? And it's really, again, it's about collective action for water security. And I'd like to just, pause here before I start talking a lot more about the Catchment Investment Program. But we've through a number of projects have focused on various interventions in the catchment. But at the same time, we've also been looking at ways to unlock financing for these areas. And that really led us to sort of explore options out there and ways to do it, because it's all good and well. People talk about impact bonds and all sorts of, innovative mechanisms to unlock finances. But we really hit a point where we weren't sure which direction to take. And we started talking to the Nature Conservancy because of the Cape Town Water Fund. And this eventually just sort of moved towards, I suppose we were lucky in a way, but the Nature for Water facility that was established at that time. And that really enabled us then to focus on a proper feasibility for the catchment and building a business case. But the whole intent around it is really to create this collective action platform, which we've been striving to do and working towards for a long time. But again, it's about how we source financing to manage these areas into longer term and then supporting existing initiatives. And in our landscape, those initiatives really are focused around aid in invasive plant control, and the business case and feasibility really supported that we need to continue with those nature-based solutions. And about 10,000 hectares have been identified now in the bladder catchments. And a plan is being put in place for an initial high impact phase to undertake the work, as well as a maintenance phase. It's mostly clearing pine and eucalyptus species that have been planted in a lot of these mostly grassland habitats in the upper catchment that really provide our water. The second nature-based solution that we've been working with, and this is very closely working with our partners, Conservation South Africa, is really around sustainable best grazing, best management practices. We have communities in the catchments, and cattle are kept by communities. It's a really important part of the culture within our country, as it is with many other parts of Africa. But a model has basically been developed that aims to work with communal livestock farmers. And the idea through the CIP would be to scale that up into the rest of the catchment. And there's a lot of community-owned areas where cattle are really important. And these areas have been degraded. So the aim is really to working with cattle and a whole range of different mechanisms to basically start restoring grasslands using cattle. So to just delve a little bit more into the business case, which was undertaken by the Nature for Water facility over about an 8-month period. But it really looked at assessing the impacts and the costs and the benefits for implementing nature-based solutions. There was a 6-step process, and it was really around identifying priority areas. A lot of hydrological SWOT modeling was undertaken. And then through that, we've estimated costs per hectare for implementing nature-based solutions, and what the benefit of this would be, and ultimately to evaluate the net benefits over into the long term for these interventions. So this is one of the things that came out of the business case, and I think it's really important. But basically, what it shows is that on the left is a grey line that basically shows the level of the Bladder Dam from about 2005 till about 2022, and you can see there were 1 or 2 events where the dam starts dropping below 60% capacity, and when that happens, it starts impacting specifically on the agricultural sector downstream. And the Bladder Dam is connected to a state-of-the-art pipeline, which basically provides water to farmers within this agricultural district. But when the dam drops below 60%, there's a reduction in pressure, and is completely gravity fed. And when that happens, it has an economic impact, because farmers start having to pull crops out of production and that kind of thing. But basically what the business case and through the modeling showed is that by implementing nature-based solutions, which is the blue line, you have less chance of those events where the dam might drop below 60%. And the orange base shows one of the scenarios that were modeled of how things might look without nature-based solutions in the catchment if we fail to remove alien invasive plants. So it's all about keeping the dam above that 60%. So the business case, I think, really painted a nice picture around what these nature-based solutions can contribute, and the 8.6 million cubic million liters of water that can be provided to the system each year. There was an economic assessment, which, like I said, basically looked at the costs and the benefits. So the costs were really around, what it costs to do the intervention. So it's management, teams in field, training, all that kind of thing. And then, what are the direct benefits in terms of water, employment opportunities? We've also put quite a lot of thoughts around the potential for carbon into the future, and specifically the rangeland management as opportunities for the sale of carbon credits. And then, obviously that has a huge broader impact in terms of water security, food security, poverty alleviation, and specifically climate resilience and positive impacts on biodiversity. And those upper catchment areas are also really important from a tourism perspective. So yeah, this is just shows the costing, and it basically just shows that nature-based solutions over the long term are more than double the costs. So one of the key elements of the work that we do, and something we've really tried to build into our business case, is not just focusing on water, but very much also focusing on opportunities around carbon, but then also biodiversity. And one of the sort of elements of the work that we do as a biosphere centers around protected area expansion, and working with landowners to protect their land. And there's various mechanisms. I can't go into too much detail because of the time, but in essence, protected area expansion can act as a mechanism to secure the investment made through the water fund. Because if you do declare land in South Africa, and specifically with private ownership, there's obligations on the landowner to better manage that land. And it makes sense that if you're going to offer an investment of however much to the alien plant clearing on your land to look after it, that negotiations could be had with that landowner to look at formally protecting that land, which then secures it into the long term. And there's a range of different sort of protected area categories that can be pursued. And the map on the left, the hatched, just shows where the protected area expansion priorities are in the catchment. And it's a large part of the catchment which has been identified as a priority for protection in South Africa, and obviously that would help contribute to 30 by 30 targets. And then that, in our mind, intrinsically links to the concept of and how we see Kruger to canyons. It's about the escarpment, but it's also about the corridors that ultimately link to the greater Kruger and important wildlife areas, which helps build climate change resilience within our landscape as well. So it's not only about the catchment, it's also about the corridors. So just briefly, the next steps, we are, we're at a point now where the business case has been completed, the feasibility has been completed, and we're now in negotiations around unlocking finance. And we are lucky in terms of the Bladed Dam, because it is managed and owned by a large bank that's very interested to explore mechanisms to have perhaps finance the first 5 years of the plan. So we're busy working on an implementation plan now. There is a lot of work that needs to go into still how we formalize some of the governance arrangements. And then And then ultimately into the future, it's around scaling into other catchments as well. I mean, we need to focus on getting it right first in the Blader, but there is a lot of interest in other catchments as well, such as showing that map that I mentioned earlier, the Upper Letaba as an example, and ultimately building a catchment investment program for the entire K2C landscape. But our focus now in the short term is to obviously focus on the Blader catchment. Yeah, that gives, I think, a brief overview of the work. And again, just to thank all our partners, and very specifically the Nature for Water Facility, the Nature Conservancy, Conservation South Africa, and a range of different people that we work with in the landscape. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for the great presentation. I see we have a few questions on the chat. So kindly keep the questions coming. We'll have a Q&A at the end. So type them in the chat or type R to ask your question live during the Q&A session. And I know Nick has mentioned a few partners and thanked one in particular. But I would like to ask this, Paul, whether you have heard of the Nature for Water Facility. It's just a yes or a no question. And then we'll have Stella ready to present. Stella, are you ready?
Yes, Florence, I'm ready, and thanks everyone for being here. Just 1 minute, upload.
Great, as Stella shares her slides, so kindly answer the question. And I can see there is a thank you for this. Stella, we can see your screen, but it's not in full presentation mode. Great. Please take it away.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And I want to take this time to start off my presentation. And I'm presenting work that is being done by the River Yala Water Fund. It's the newest water fund in Africa. And just to mention a few of the activities that we are carrying out. And maybe just important to say, sorry for the hitch. Okay, thank you very much. And maybe I just want to make a mention that this is the kind of River Yala that we are anticipating with this kind of conservation all along. Although as we speak now, the rate of degradation and sedimentation is very high, but that's the vision we have for the water fund. And we are putting in effort as a team together with the Nature Conservancy and the Nature for Water facilities that are assisting us to proceed. Maybe just one thing to mention, an introduction on the lead organization, and this is WANC, WWANC, Women in Water and Natural Resource Conservation. This is the lead organization for this, and maybe important to say it's women-led, and our entry point into conservation activities on the ground is through women and girls. But we also work with youth and even men. The reason why we chose to work with women and water is because of the fact that women and girls interact a lot with the environment, and therefore they bear every form of a burden that comes with the degradation of the environment. They are the ones who reach out and look for water, look for firewood, and be able to make the family running. And they also get involved a lot in degradation of environments. And therefore, that's why they are actually the group that we should base on to be able to conserve the environment, because they are sure that when they conserve the environment, then they are actually adding value to their own lives. And according to reports from the UN Women, climate crisis is actually has a gender bias. It's not gender neutral. And the women are the ones who bear most of the burden that comes with it. You have girls dropping out, and you have illnesses that are vector-borne also increasing. And this also affects the women. Climate change also comes with high temperatures, and it has been researched and found that high temperatures also increase the rate at which stillbirths come up, and therefore women are the ones who bear all this, and I'm so sure they'll be willing to do the best to be able to conserve the environment, and that's why we have picked on them. And they are very important, enthusiastic, basically working with agricultural businesses. And because of working on the farm, they are actually involved in conversion, land conversion, and other aspects or activities that can easily degrade our environment. Yet they also depend on this environment to be able to make a living, sell seedlings, sell crops that yield from the land as they prepare, and other ecosystem benefits that come out of the environment. So all along, I'm just saying that it's important for us to involve women into conservation activities, and maybe just urge and thank the Nature Conservancy for picking on this organization to lead, so that we mainstream women and girls into the whole process of environmental conservation. There are three aspects that I'm going to present about in this time that I've been given. The first one is just a status on the River Yala Water Fund. And I want to say that the fund is still at the creation stage. And right now we are still looking up upon the Nature for Water facility. And this is the consultancy that is helping WANC to be able to come up with the water fund. And they are doing a great work with us. They are working on feasibility report. They are also working on creation of the water fund. They are working on design, and more so they are working on the business case, so that then we can be able to launch it and draw more people or investors to help us bring up the fund. Just one thing to say, the River Yala traverses 4 important counties in Kenya, that is Nandi and Vihiga, Kakamega, and Siaya, and it generates and provides water, supplies water to all institutions in these counties. It also provides water to hospitals, provides water to domestic setups, and therefore it is really, really key that this watershed is protected, so that then all these counties can be able to continue getting the water from this setup. Now, there are a few challenges that come, or that we have experienced, or that come with the conservation. And maybe important just to say is that when we started the work, or working on the River Yala Water Fund, we were able to set up a team in the WANC team to be able to spearhead a few activities that would help us to project the need and the challenges that we are addressing, be it agriculture, be it sedimentation. And there are a few processes that we took up in the baseline survey to be able to inform the whole process of conservation. And most importantly, it's important for us to note that the river or the wetland is serving a crucial source of water for agricultural activities. And this is the backbone for all deliverables for those 4 counties. So then it becomes important for us to be able to conserve this river. Now, from the baseline survey that we carried out, there were a few challenges that came up that we noticed. from the data that was collected, which we need to approach, or which we need to work out to as we carry on with the conservation measures. And these challenges included deforestation, encroachment, pollution, socioeconomic challenges with the setups in the communities, gender issues, etc. And most importantly, the water security challenge, which we are hoping to help to reduce. Now, because of those challenges that we have noted, we carried out a stakeholder analysis to find out which kind of stakeholders we need to include, and it came out clear that we needed to work with the government agencies, the non-governmental organizations, the community itself, and other sectors like line ministries and maybe National Environment Management Authority. And we have reached out to a number of people, of stakeholders, like the CS, the line ministries, and even the national government. We also carried out GIS mapping and spatial data collection in the areas, and this has helped us to come up with the areas that are highly degraded, and we are planning to work in 3 sub-counties within the area, and we have already isolated the different hotspot areas that we are going to address as we start off or at the creation of the water fund. There are 3 sub-counties that we have picked out, and we have already identified the specific areas that we are going to map. I would like to say at this point that we are working together with the Nature for Water Facility, comparing what they are coming up with, because up to this time, they're already compiling the document for feasibility study, the document for the business case, the documents actually for the GIS areas, the degraded areas that we are going to work on. So what we are doing is comparing our results and those that the Nature for Water Facility have, so that whatever basic activities we start, then when the water fund comes up, it can build on that. That is going well. We have been sharing and exchanging notes, and the findings that the Nature for Water Facility have are really in tandem with the findings that our organization or our group has carried out. Maybe important to say is that after the TNC accepted our proposal and started working via the Nature for Water Facility, we took it up to ourselves also to find out what other activities can be carried out within the catchment as we wait for the water fund to pick up. And together with TNC, again, want to say thank you, because they gave us a grant to start running watershed catchment protection program. And this is the funding that has helped us to do the baseline surveys in the area of stakeholder analysis, in the area of GIS mapping, and even in the area of hydrological monitoring. And that's why I'm saying whatever we are doing, we are working together with the Nature for Water Facility, so that we start off a process that will build on for us to get to the point where we want. So in the hydrological survey, we were able to carry out sampling and analysis of the water quality in laboratories. So as we stand now, we have data that gives an indication of which part of the river is highly degraded in terms of water quality, and therefore this informs us on the specific areas that we are going to work on, even as we start the main process after the launching of the business case, which is scheduled to happen either within this month or maybe in the near future. Now, as a result of this, after getting the data from the three objectives that we have been working on, we have come up with the nature-based solutions that we are proposing for implementation at that, and this includes agroforestry, sustainable land management practices, rainwater harvesting, regeneration agriculture, community forest management. So those are some of the nature-based solutions that we have picked out after consulting or after looking at the data that came out of the baseline survey. And apart from that, we also have come up with a list of nature-based enterprises that will help the communities to be able to come up with an alternative livelihood that will then help them continue with their own life and yet protect the watershed. So those who had encroached into the catchment, planting of vegetables and all the other activities that compromise the quality of water, we are then in a position to advise on which enterprises can be carried out away from the catchment to help the people continue with their normal life and yet carry out protection. So some of these nature-based enterprises would include activities like handcrafts, where the women can make items from wetland resources, and maybe from, like this basket is made from polythene bags that are thrown all over within the catchment. So we are putting women together so that they can be able to use that and solve the problem of pollution by plastics. And now we also have come up with a projection to give on how the catchment may be protected. And we are saying that for proper protection of our catchment, we will focus on agricultural activities, because most communities actually depend on agricultural activities for livelihood. So because this is already existing, then we are saying we should be able to come up with nature-based solutions that focus on sustainable agricultural practices, so that much as they continue with agriculture, but they are doing it sustainably. Then we also have aspects that will focus on sedimentation, on flooding, and management of diseases, restoration and conservation. And specifically, we are going to focus on conservation, restoration of wetlands. There are two wetlands that we have identified, and we are going to emphasize on that. We'll also do restoration of forests, much as we'll also do on-land farming or on-land planting of fruit trees and other agroforestry trees. And all this is geared towards improving the river and wetland status. Now, I have a case study of work that has been done in this wetland, and all this is required to show is that whatever baseline research data that we have collected is in tandem with studies that have already been carried out within this wetland, to show that up to the point where we are, there is degradation within the stretch of the catchment, and that there are specific aspects that we need to carry out, or there are indicators that have been shown earlier through earlier studies, and these are comparable to what we are seeing, just to give us confidence that what we are working on is true, and that the business case coming up will tally with the science case to be able to support the work that we are planning to do. And this study was carried out by Stella Wanjala et al. This was actually my PhD thesis, and I carried out work within the area where the catchment is. This is Kingwal wetland, which is part of River Yala watershed, the upper part of River Yala. And from my findings, I saw and I found out, and this is in tandem with other studies, that for any good quality water body, you must have, or you will always get a high percentage of three genera of macroinvertebrates. I'm talking about this because in our study and in our conservation, we are going to focus on biodiversity conservation for the major and important plants and animals within the stretch. Now, this is just to confirm that there's degradation taking place along the river, so that at the source of the river, the studies have shown that there is clearer water, the quality is higher, and as you move down, the quality keeps on decreasing. Now, this figure here shows three, I talked of three genera, that's Ephemeroptera, Trichoptera, and Placoptera. These are three genera that are usually used to determine water quality within any given water body. And if you look at this, they are higher, their percentages are higher in the first site, which is Cases, and the Cases is found at the watershed itself. Now, as you move down the watershed from Cases to Kimondi, you find that the levels and percentages of these three EPT keep on reducing. The three are only found at the watershed, but as you move down, then you only have two of them existing, meaning that there is degradation and loss of water quality as you move down. And this is also shown on, if this is a figure that shows human disturbance index in the various parts. The first part is the first three from 1 to 3 are showing the human degradation index at the upper point, that is at the watershed, and the last three are showing at the lower part of the river. So you find that as you move from the watershed, the upper watershed, the index is lower. But as you continue down the river, the index increases, showing that human disturbance is increasing along that catchment as you move down the river. And this figure now shows the macroinvertebrate index of biotic integrity. This is an index that shows how well the wetland or the water body is performing its ecological activities. And if you look at this index, it is higher at the upper level, that's RBI, compared to the lower part, also showing that there is degradation that is taking place within the wetland, within the waters, as you go down the catchment. And from the data we collected, it came out very clearly that the upper part, that is the source of the river, has a moderate category of degradation. And you could quantify it or classify it as moderate in terms of water quality. But as you go down, the water quality decreases and you end up with poor water quality. That also just means that we need to do something so that we continue working and changing and checking on the water quality. And this can be done through nature-based solutions. And this figure here shows a regression of human disturbance index and macroinvertebrate index. The higher the index of biotic integrity, the lower the human disturbance index, and the higher the human disturbance index, the lower the index of biotic integrity. So this actually just shows that we need to come in with nature-based solutions to be able to stop the trend of degradation that is going on. Now, from that, we have projected, suggested a number of policies that we hope that as we work on, as the Water Fund starts, we can embrace for us to be able to intervene in the degradation that we are seeing. And this will include promotion of nature-based solutions, empowerment of women, establishment of a proper and good monitoring team, and also setting up a policy on consent for the community so that before we start any work, we have to interact with them, get their consent, even on sharing whatever we get from them and sharing even their photos and their contribution. And maybe as I finish, let me just say something small about the AIF project. This is the second phase of the project that we are carrying out. Initially, we had the wetland wet catchment protection program. Now we are moving on to the second phase where we are carrying out AIF project, and again majorly emphasizing on the gender balance in carrying out the project. And this is our plan of activities. We have planned to restore 390,200 hectares of degraded indigenous forests, to develop 20,000 farm plans, to facilitate on-farm investments. We have also planned to implement agroforestry, boundary planting, and soil and water conservation on 10,000 hectares of land, and promote 2,000 energy-saving technologies, like the energy-saving stoves. So we will train and give them out to the catchment community, and to restore the riverbank up to 1050 kilometers of the riverbank. And other conservation activities that we have planned include construction of water pans, and then capacity building for 60 communities. And we are emphasizing that 30% of that should be women, because we are mainstreaming women into conservation activities. We are also planning to do advocacy so that we come up with enactment of at least 2 policies out of what we have suggested. And we have also planned to register for 2 carbon credit projects, all courtesy of TNC. And this is just a reference to some of the data that we have collected, in case anyone would want to get to it. I think that is okay. I want to say thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Stella, for the great presentation. I know we'll quite stretch on time, so we'll just go right to the questions, and then in the end, you'll hear a bit more about the nature for water facility in about 3 minutes also. So we'll start with questions that came in first from Esther. I don't know whether, Esther, you're able to unmute, or I can voice out the question for you. And the question was to Nick. Okay, so the question was, can you please share the strategies that you are using to conserve the red list species along the catchment? So that is one question. Then the other question is, what type of financing arrangement is seeming promising at this stage? Also, that is to Nick. And then the other question was on getting a copy of the feasibility report, which was shared on chat. And I will have Nick or the team answer to those 2 questions. Yes.
So the question around the biodiversity is just around our interventions and how they benefit biodiversity. Is that correct? I didn't see that question in the chat. Yeah, I mean, the areas where we focused in the upper catchments are mostly grasslands. And so the species that occur in a lot of these areas are, you know, it's not like your larger iconic species type projects. So it's really about habitat protection and securing a lot of that land and protecting a lot of that land. There's been a lot of transformation in those areas, so a lot of those vegetation types are threatened. So on the one hand, it's really about trying to prevent further degradation and further loss and further land transformation, which is where the stewardship options come in, but it's also really about improving management and using things like cattle and restoring areas where there's alien invasive plants. In terms of the financing, there's a couple of options that we're currently exploring, and the immediate need is that, you know, that five-year impact period to clear most of the aliens and then do the rangeland management. So So there is interest from, as I mentioned, a bank that owns the pipeline, and I think their interest is really about, I think on the one hand, sort of the ESG type pressures as a banking sector, and but then at the same time, securing and looking after the catchment means that the pipeline, which is being paid off by farmers at the bottom, is more likely. Obviously, if the catchment starts failing, farmers are less likely to be able to pay off their loans. So there's also a compensation plan that's being looked at through a mine. They have to invest in alien plant clearing over and above some of their commitments, general commitments as a mine. And then, as I mentioned, we're looking at some longer term financing options, and that links a lot to carbon credits. And potential with the farmers to, into the longer term, perhaps pay a certain rate per box of fruit sold, or as part of their water that they're paying for that comes out of the catchment. There's also other sectors that we need to focus on. But I think the thing that's really interested investors potentially is this sort of layering of not just water, but the biodiversity elements, as well as the potential for carbon into the future as well. So I think they're interested in the package and having all these different benefits bundled. So yeah, so I hope that answers the question. It is early days for the investment of the bank, but they're basically looking at some sort of a water bond type structure, although it would be quite different.
Thank you, Nick, for those answers. Emily, Esther, do you have a follow-on? I know Emily had listed a follow-on question on which part of the business case or information on the business case has been most attractive to potential investors.
Bonjour à tous, ici Babacar Sem, Sénégal.
Thank you for joining, Sene. So Nick, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think like I said, I think it's the fact that, look, I mean, it's very much tailored to the landscape. So I think from that perspective, it's quite specific, and maybe it's difficult to kind of tease something out that maybe would apply to other potential investors in other landscapes. Although I do think that the way we've structured it in terms of the rangeland management and the alien plant clearing, which has water as well as carbon, and the biodiversity side is, I think, of a lot of interest. There seems to be quite a big move within the finance sectors to focus on biodiversity credits and that kind of thing as well. So they like the fact that there's these different elements to the business case, that it's not just about water. And the other thing is, and at least in South Africa, it's really important. It's the creation of jobs, and some potential investors that we're talking to are really interested in achieving sort of targets around jobs and that kind of thing. So I think it's about putting together a package with various elements that has interested people so far.
Thank you, Nick. Emily, let me know if the answer was satisfactory or you would like a follow-on. On the next question was from Kathy. Kathy, do you want to ask your question to Stella? Okay, so the question was, how has this project incorporated the negative effects of the ASGSM sector in the mentioned counties? Stella, that was a question addressed to you. Stella, you're muted.
Florence, just let me get it again, please.
Okay. So the question was, how has this project incorporated the negative effects of ASGSM sector in the mentioned counties?
Maybe if I could just get the full form of ASGM, what that means.
Florence, this is Kathy.
Please go ahead, Kathy.
SGM in full is artisanal and small-scale gold mining sector, and you find that in the mentioned counties, especially in Kakamega, there's a lot of activities of gold mining, and there's mercury pollution that is flowing into our rivers. So I wanted to know how this project has incorporated that aspect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I want to agree with you that, and actually like almost all those counties except Nandi doesn't have a lot of that. Vihiga, Kakamega, and even Siaya have a lot of mining going on. And that's one of the reasons why we are here. That is majorly most of the hotspots that we have identified have a lot to do with that. So we are hoping that as we start off the program, because we haven't started as such, but we are going to concentrate a lot on that because this makes up most of the degraded areas. And we know that this requires a really participatory approach. So we are hoping to have conversations with the communities that are involved, and more so come up with alternative livelihoods that we can be able to give to these people, so that then we ask them to move out of the catchment and concentrate on the alternative livelihoods. In my presentations, I made mention of some of the listed entrepreneurship activities that we are hoping to do. So we are hoping to train, capacity build, and speak to them and ask them to move out of the catchment, probably move out of mining and pick up on nature-based solutions that can still give them something to put on their table. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella, for that. And there's a program that's ongoing. It's called Planet Gold Kenya, that seeks to introduce alternative technologies into the sector so that we can reduce the use of mining, the use of mercury. I'm sorry. So maybe you can reach out to us, and we can forge on a partnership on working with women. Thank you.
Yeah, so just make sure we exchange contacts. I think I'll get your contact from the chat if you have indicated, so that we can communicate after this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Great, thank you, Kathy and Stella. Kindly put your email addresses on chat for connection after the meeting. So we have another question from Sidol, who says, how is the coordination of investment to Kruger to Canyon project stroke water fund coordinated? So just need to understand the investment model. I know Nick had talked a bit about the investments, but do you want to expound a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to say is it's a work in progress, and it's something that it is quite early days, and we are putting together a team that's working on how this can look, and it's quite a varied team. But yeah, so it's difficult to answer how that would exactly all be structured, but there is a really strong commitment from the finance sector and partners within the landscape working around this. So hopefully we'll have something a bit more tangible in the next 6 months or so. But yeah.
Great, thank you, Nick. Fred, you had a question for Nick. Do you want to voice it out?
Florence, thank you very much. And I just want to, for both of them, I think we have had very outstanding presentations today and touched on many things that matter to many of us, from East Africa to South Africa to Senegal in West Africa and other geographies. Just want to quickly ask a quick question, Nick. It's you. Okay, if I got you right, you talked about some incentives if land is privately owned, and people want to convert it into conserved or what we call protected area status. If that's true, just let me know, how do you manage the incentive? What makes the landowner feel motivated to do that? If I got you wrong, let me know, and it's no problem. Thank you.
Sure, Fred, nice to hear your voice again. Yeah, I mean, in South Africa, we have the Protected Areas Act, and over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a real push by not only provincial conservation agencies, but also very much the NGO sector to establish a stewardship program. And that program does work with private landowners and encourage them to declare their land. And as part of that, as part of those, obviously private landowners are then helping government achieve its protected area expansion targets and 30 by 30 targets and all of that. There are incentives which links to various things, but there are specific tax incentives that landowners can apply for under our Income Tax Act, as well as rebates on rates that landowners pay. So there are financial incentives, as well as the idea is really to provide other incentives for those landowners through various programs. So for example, if there are programs in South Africa where alien invasive plants have been cleared by governments, and if you're a landowner that's helping governments achieve its protected area expansion targets, then it would make sense to put teams onto that landowner's land. It also means that landowner has made quite a strong commitment to conservation, because the declarations normally last 99 years. So there's various incentives in that regard. So we also are exploring how that kind of work can obviously steward investments in the catchments and help secure them into the longer term, which we're hoping will be something that would be attractive to an investor. If you're going to invest as an investor through a water bond or whatever, a certain amount of money into a clearing project, and then that landowner has made a commitment to perhaps declare his land, which comes with a management plan and a gazette and a formal declaration, that it would make the investment perhaps a little bit more attractive, because of the fact that it would be looked after into the longer term by the landowner. So yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Fred, do you have a follow-on?
No, I appreciate the response. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. So we have one final question from Ruyo Kale. I don't know whether you want to voice out your question. From Uganda, this is Raymond. Okay. If not, the question was, how have you involved?
Florence. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Sorry for that. One is to appreciate the team for the great work. Raymond from Uganda, and I wish to, from the discussion, what Stella was mentioning, I would like to know how you have been inclusive enough, especially for the person living with disabilities, especially young people in your program, because many times the person living with different abilities are left behind. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'll let both Stella and Nick answer if they have any responses to that question.
Thank you, Florence. I can take it first. And thank you, Raymond, for your question. That is really important. And I am WANC, actually, we are so keen on mainstreaming of the less fortunate, of the disadvantaged, and therefore that question is really right for us. And I want to say that we've been very keen in involving youth to work with us. We have involved a group of youths that are very vibrant in the area of conservation. In the upper catchment of River Yala, we have a big group that is led by a Catholic priest, father who is very passionate with conservation, and he has a very large number of youths, and he is part of our team, and therefore we are hoping that as we start, we are going to involve the youth, both ladies and gentlemen, to work with us on this, so that then they are included in the project. For the people living with disabilities, we are also keen on that, and we are hoping that as we mainstream women into this, we are not closing our eyes on the people living with disabilities. And when we finally start, we know that within the stakeholders, the 9 stakeholders that we have come up with, we are going to ensure that the people that are coming on board to represent the stakeholder that we have called on board will be inclusive of people with disabilities. And as we speak now, the women groups that we are working with, some of them have women who are disabled and they are still on board. So we are going to be keen on that, especially as we launch the program. Now, maybe important to say is that what we are discussing is River Yala Water Fund is work in progress. But the day we start, we launch and pick up, we'll be keen on such ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella, for the comprehensive answer. Nick, do you have a comment on that in a quick 1 minute?
Yeah, similar here. I mean, our programs are very much focused on youth. So it's very much from obviously providing jobs. Most of the land within the catchment is the communities either own or are the custodians of that land. So we work with community structures, but all our programs have a strong focus on youth. And we also try and make sure it's inclusive and that women are also employed. And from a monitoring perspective as well, there's quite a few of our projects focus on citizen science monitors as well, collecting data. And the hope is that through the Catchment Investment Program, those youth can be employed to continue with a lot of the river monitoring exercises and that kind of thing as well. But the whole idea ultimately is to move away from our reliance on donor funding.
Thank you, Nick. Those are all the questions that we had for today. However, we had a poll question that asked you whether you have heard of the Nature for Water facility. At least 70% of the people said yes. But now I would like us to give us a little bit more information about who is the Nature for Water facility, how does it work, who can apply, and when the applications are usually open. Please go ahead, Justus.
Hi, everyone. Florence, can you hear me? Wonderful.
Yes.
So first of all, thanks for the great presentations, Nick and Stella. It's really cool to see all that you've achieved over the last set of months and in many cases years too. So as Stella mentioned, as Florence mentioned, I'm Eustace. I work for the Nature for Water facility. This is a co-managed program between TNC and a consultancy group out of Africa called Pegasus. And we work together and with a variety of other partners to provide hand-in-hand support with local partners that want to build watershed investment programs and water funds. And so we've worked together both with Stella and Nick on their respective business cases. And we're excited about, Stella, your upcoming launch for the business case in a few weeks' time. And we also do other things too, like do pre-feasibility assessments or sort of strategic plan design. We try to be able to provide hand-in-hand support to local partners across the sort of development life cycle of these programs. And we're there to make sure that these programs have the full science-based backing and technical and sort of ecological underpinnings that sort of we find to be successful in different contexts, but it's all in service to that local partner. And that's what comes first. So, and I'm also pleased to be joined on the call here by my colleague Mike, who is the program co-lead for Pegasus. He's listening in with a team out of the UK, actually. So, Florence, your question. So, as Florence mentioned, we have a semi-annual call for proposals. You can find more out about that in the chat. Brooke, thank you for sharing the link there to the website, and that has a bunch of documentation on all the things Nature for Water does, including our call for proposals. And that's the way that we receive applicants and prioritize where we can help those applicants with our limited team's resources. And importantly, we finished out our our third call for proposals in May, received a bunch of great applicants, some of which are on the call today, and we'll be sharing news on which finalists will proceed to scoping by end of week. So stay tuned for those that applied in the last call for proposals. Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you, Justus. Kindly look at the chat for more information on the Nature for Water facility. And with that, we have come to the end of the call. Just to thank you for your cooperation. At least everybody stayed muted and it was a very interactive session. Thank you all for joining. I know it is a bit late for some who are in the East Africa and Ari for those who are in the US, but thank you everyone for joining. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in 2 months' time. This call recording will be shared together with the presentations after the call through your emails. Kindly be on the lookout for that, and also check out our newsletters. And looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you, everyone, and bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.